Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Elham Fardad. I am the Migrant Leaders founder and CEO, and I am really excited that you have been able to join us today. We've got lots and lots of the Migrant Leaders mentees who've joined our education conference this morning, and we are really pleased, particularly at this time. My message to young people really would be that more than ever, you need to start thinking about the future. More than ever, you need to continue to engage with migrant leaders, with our team, and with the wider society and corporates, so that others who understand you can support you towards your futures. So thank you for joining us today. We've got a really exciting program ready for you. I'm going to start by telling you as a recap about what is the Migrant Leaders Development Program. So I will share a screen with you. You should be able to see a screen in less than a minute that shows our Migrant Leaders vision and program. Can everyone see that? Yes, I have a thumbs up. Thank you. So this slide shows our Migrant Leaders Development Program and what it is. As you know, you will have seen this slide previously because our program has been solidified for quite some time now through the design that I did originally, consulting with young people, consulting with experts, consulting with corporates and the education sector. And this is what emerged as a program for migrant leaders. The development program you're actually getting is really in three parts. One, as you know, we connect you with a senior mentor from large organizations and FTSE 100 companies and leading firms. And the mentors that we carefully match to you each reflect the aspirations that you have in terms of the kind of company, the kind of industry, and the kind of career that you want to have. So we take our time really matching the right mentor to you, and that's a very important part of our development program for you young people who are on the Migrant Leaders Development Program. The second part of the development program you get that is really important is through our corporate partnerships. You will have seen some of the workshops and conferences that you have attended, such as our corporate partners such as Kantar and Smith & Nephew, Anglo-American. Those were really important workshops to give you insights into what it is to work in a big company, what kind of jobs do they have, what kind of operations and things do they do. And as a result of those partnerships, we are now in the second and third year of working with those companies. And as a result, we've got coming up our deep dive into STEM careers with Smith & Nephew in July. We've got a very exciting internship, virtual internship with Kantar coming up this summer. So we'll be writing to you about all of that in a short while. I want to, as a conclusion to my talk, share with you a video that some of you actually starred in. This was our Smith & Nephew conference that you will recognize some of your friends in. And it shows you the kind of impact our charity has on young people.
In the UK, there remains a skills gap in STEM. So workshops like the Migrant Leaders
Migrant Leaders is a bespoke development program for young people of disadvantaged and underrepresented backgrounds between the age of 16 and 25. Today's conference with Smith & Nephew is really exciting for us. This partnership gives incredible hands-on experiences and insights to our young mentees. And I wished I had such an opportunity when I was younger.
I really believe in the cause that Migrant Leaders sets out to espouse, which is around creating a landscape where there's equality of opportunity for first and second generation migrants to really succeed and prosper in the business world.
In the UK, there remains a skills gap in STEM, and so workshops like the Migrant Leaders workshop today is vital to allow STEM ambassadors like myself to show students what a variety of careers are available to them and to inspire them to follow their dreams.
I hope to go into healthcare career, so primarily medicine.
I do want to go into some kind of engineering, probably electrical engineering like my dad.
I'm really inspired by those women in STEM around me I hope to join them one day.
We need to reflect the environment in which we work and go and access local talent and give them the best opportunity to succeed as well.
Your background, your ethnicity, where you come from, male, female, age range, can all change the way you perceive situations in the world, and that's really, really useful when you're problem solving.
There is a hidden benefit for the future as well, that the next generation of talent will be inspired by those role models, so that the next generation can actually see themselves having an opportunity to become top directors in corporates in the future.
Okay, so hopefully everyone enjoyed seeing So everyone, I hope you enjoyed seeing your friends in the conference. And that is really an example of the sort of corporate partnerships we do, and the experiences and the access that our young mentees get to industry in different sectors and seeing different jobs and opportunities. So as a final message, really, I'd like to ask all of you, those who have joined us today, to reach out to your friends, family, and your communities, and encourage those that you think would benefit from the Migrant Leaders Development Program, opportunities and experiences. Reach out and encourage those between the age of 16 and 25 to apply to our program on our website, migrantleaders.org.uk. So thank you very much. Really, really looking forward to having you on our education conference today. And I shall pass to Fawzia Hart now, who will tell you more about today's conference. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me? Excellent. Okay, so thanks, Hussein. I'm going to share my screen with you and talk you through a couple of housekeeping issues and just let you know how things are going to run today, really. So we've mentioned that we're going to have questions in the chat box. So if everybody can just move their mouse to the bottom of their screen and find their chat box, make sure they can get access to that, that would be fantastic. During the course of the day, we'll be sharing some documents with you. You might have already seen them in when we've written to you with the invitation, but we will be sharing some documents with you, and we'll put links to those in the chat. So make sure that you can get in there. And we're also going to be using Slidos. So what I'd really like to do now is get you to access slido.com either on your smartphone, a tablet, or open a new tab on your search engine, go into slido.com, and then when you're asked to, put in the event code there, which is 88232. If you could all do that now, then I'm going to change the screen that I'm sharing with you, and actually, am I going to change the screen that I'm sharing with you? I'm going to share that, and then I'm going to now you should be getting a question that says, which university are you interested in? It might be still running, so bear with. Okay, great, and some people have started entering which ones they're interested in, so that's excellent. A few of you are in there. So I'm going to leave that running for a little while before handing over to Kate in a little while, and this will give her, so LSE is becoming quite popular. Clearly LSE is the most popular one there. Okay, I'm going to I think I might have paused the share there, so keep going to put my housekeeping screen back on. And just to let you know, but before I hand over to Kate, we will be building breaks into the session so that we're not all sitting still on our chairs for the rest of the whole conference. It's worth knowing that how to turn your video on and off as well. So you might want to practice that, and make sure that you turn your audio on eventually when we do the Q&A session at the end of the conference. But in the meantime, any questions that you've got can go into the chat. So I am going to hand over to Kate, and when I can find out how to do it. I think I might have to hand back to Elham. Sorry, this is... Okay, sorry, I'm just trying to get this back to Kate, and I can't figure out how to do that at the moment.
That's okay, Fawzia. Please feel free to hand back to me, and I can hand back to Kate. No problem at all. I think you might have to stop sharing first.
I can't see, I'm so sorry, I can't see how to hand this back to Kate.
If you can see in the participants box, if you can see Kate's name, you'd have to scroll down until you find Kate's name.
Yeah.
And then hover over her name.
Sorry, everybody, I have completely forgotten how to do that.
I am now here. Thank you for
apologise.
Thank you. Hi everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. My name's Kate, and I'm going to be leading the next hour of this session. And I'm going to spend the first few minutes really just giving you a bit of an overview as to my work and my background and what I do, which hopefully will then give you some confidence that the advice I'm going to share with you comes from a good experience anyway, a positive place. And then we're going to spend the majority of our time together today focusing on your university application, and in particular personal statement writing. So I'm sure that you have the conference agenda, but for those of you who don't have it in front of you, I'm going to speak for a bit, and then we're going to go into a personal statement troubleshooting session. So that's what we're going to do. I hope that many of you, if not all of you, have had the opportunity to take my personal statement masterclass online. And I hope that some of you have found that useful and that you've been able to write a strong draft of your personal statement as a result. But even if you haven't yet had the chance to do that, I hope that we'll be able to get some good questions, and I'll be able to give you some advice on the line today. So really, this session for me is about helping you. So although we have an outline here of what we're going to do, it really does rely on you engaging with me today over chat or over the line here on Zoom to really get the most out of the session. And I really hope that you go away feeling that you've made some real progress on your university application. So let me share my screen with you. I'm going to give you a bit of an introduction to myself. Let's go from the beginning, shall we? Very good place to start, as Julianne just says. Right, so let's kick off a little bit about myself. So I'm the founder and director of a social enterprise called Varsity Scholars. And Varsity Scholars works with schools and with students and with parents and with organisations like the wonderful Migrant Leaders. And we partner with those who are interested in either going to university or supporting those who go to university. And our job is really to make the university application process easier for you. And to make sure that you as an individual applicant are able to put forward your very, very best application. And I see from the Slido that you were doing that LSE is a very popular choice. I'm sure that I don't need to tell you that that is a very competitive institution, and that if you're interested in getting a place at LSE or any of the universities that you listed on the Slido, that you are going to need to be able to put forward a really top quality application, which I'm sure that you are all more than capable of doing. But it does take a little bit of information, advice and guidance to get you over the line. And that's what we're all about at Varsity Scholars. So I'm really thrilled to be able to have this morning with you to really help you with your application. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm actually isolated here at the moment in Hertfordshire at my parents' house. I'm currently in my sister's old bedroom, so it's a bit of nostalgia for me this morning. And here are my siblings. I'm the eldest of 5 children. My mum worked in local government, and my dad was a photographer for many years. And we grew up, I was born in London, and I went to primary school in London, but my parents moved to Hertfordshire when I was about 8-9 years old, and so I did most of my secondary schooling in Hertfordshire at a very good state comprehensive school in Hertfordshire. But here I am, here are my siblings. So I'm at the top, and then the girl with the very long blonde hair and the sort of maroon dress is my sister Chessie. She went to Durham University. She studied philosophy. Then in the patterned dress is Hannah. Hannah studied politics at Southampton University. And then we go down, so you've got my brother Nick, who's at Manchester. He has a first-class degree, actually, first in family to get a first-class degree in English from Manchester. And then my little sister Olivia with the teddy bear there, who's also isolated with me at home at the moment. She is in Glasgow, at Glasgow University, studying music at the moment. So she's, of all of us, she's the one that's still at university. And this picture was taken for my mum's 60th birthday, and we did the classic kind of reinventing the family portrait, as you can see. So that rather hideous shot at the bottom is me when I was probably 10 years old, yeah, we obviously recreated it for my mum's birthday. But the point of me sharing this sort of information with you is to sort of, I suppose, underline a bit about where I was coming from. Neither of my parents went to university, so me and my siblings were the first in our family to go to university, and I went to a very good school. I'm very lucky to have some great teachers and lots of support, but it wasn't a school that sent a lot of people to very selective institutions. And so really I was in the position that I imagine a lot of you are in, which is trying to kind of find your way through the application process, and trying to do your best with the information that you have. So my school motto was aim higher. And this was something that, as a kind of conscientious student at school, I took very seriously, and I did work hard. I was pretty average actually at GCSE, but when I was about 16, a teacher came to the school, and she was very interested in debating and public speaking. And I got really into this when I was sort of about 16, 17, and became very good at it. And we used to go and compete against other schools and go to competitions. And it was a really, really wonderful and sort of life-changing experience for me, really. So taking up debating was, for me, what I hope being part of the Migrant Leaders Development Programme will be for you, which is, you know, a real opportunity to meet other people, to get good advice, to really be inspired, and to really encourage you to kind of move forward and be the best version of yourself that's possible. And for me, debating was a bit like that. I didn't have the Migrant Leaders Development Programme, but I did have debating. And so we used to go to different schools and do public speaking competitions. And I met some really, really wonderful people there. And so I rather ambitiously set my sights on Oxford University. And really it was because I met a lot of really great people who were going to Oxford, and we went to a competition at Oxford, and I fell in love with the city. I just thought it was absolutely beautiful and really inspiring, and I really wanted to be part of that. But no one I really knew had been to Oxford, and my school didn't send a lot of people to Oxford and Cambridge, and so it was quite an ambitious ask, and I think my parents thought I was mad, but I really wanted to go, and so I worked really, really hard, and I geared up really, really hard to make an application, and I applied for history and politics, and I worked really hard on my application, including my personal statement. But I fell into a bit of a trap, which was that I had in my head an idea of what I thought an Oxford graduate or an Oxford student would be. And I sort of played up to that idea in my mind, and I didn't really think about what I was actually interested in and what was important to me. And instead, I sort of kind of tried to present myself as an image of what I thought that they were looking for. And that turned out to be a really big mistake, because my application was rejected. I got to interview, I did an interview, but then I got the kind of Dear John letter, thank you, thanks but no thanks. And I was really gutted because I really wanted to go to Oxford. I'd put a lot sort of out there on the line about wanting to go. People knew that I'd applied. It was quite embarrassing to get a rejection. Obviously, you know, when you know, as you will all understand, you're all ambitious students, you all want to do well. You know, sometimes people aren't always that understanding or that supportive. And, you know, I did get quite a lot of kind of rolling of the eyes and, oh, well, you know, she thought she was so great, but she's not type thing. Some of you perhaps have experienced something similar in your own lives. And so it did hurt, it stung. And so I sort of sat up in my room with my rejection letter, had a little cry to myself, and then decided to pull myself together. And what I decided to do was to reapply, which was quite a big deal because I had offers from other great universities, which I could have accepted. But I just really felt like I hadn't done my best. You know, I really felt that I had let myself down, that I'd got distracted by things that weren't important. And so I really wanted to make that application again. So I withdrew from UCAS. I turned down all my other offers, much to my mum's utter horror and dismay. And I took a gap year and I got a job on the high street locally to me, and I worked in an office and I earned a bit of extra money, and I took a kind of ill-fated gap year to Malaysia, where, you know, I did a lot of the things that you sort of used to do on gap years and community work, etc. And I reapplied, really with a lot more focus. I was obviously better prepared, better informed, and I worked really, really hard on my application, and really gave a lot of thought to why I was doing it and what I was doing at each stage. And this is where I applied. This is Balliol College in Oxford. And I applied for history degree, and on this occasion I was successful, which was fantastic, and I got an offer and I got to go and study at this beautiful beautiful college. That stripy building, the red stripy building, that's actually the chapel. I got married there in October. I met my husband, my now husband, as an undergraduate at university, so we've been together 13 years now, quite a long time, and so we got married there in October. And the building that's sort of attached to it, the kind of lower level building, that's part of the library where I spent a lot of time, so very, very fond memories for me. And here I am graduating, so this is my parents, looking sort of very dressed up for the occasion, bit of gust of wind there, and I graduated my degree in modern history, and it was a great, great experience. I loved being an undergraduate. I loved being a student. I loved Oxford. It was a fantastic place for me. It really was the right place for me. And I'm very, very pleased that I was able to spend so much time there. And so when I graduated, I did what a lot of graduates do, which is I got a corporate job. So some of you might be interested in consulting. So I was a consultant with Accenture for a while, but it wasn't really for me. I learned a lot and I enjoyed my time there, but it wasn't really what I was about. And so I actually got a phone call from college, my old college at Balliol. And it's a funny story, which I won't go into too much detail on now, but suffice to say, when I was an undergraduate, I needed some financial help from the college, and my parents couldn't afford, eldest of 5 children, couldn't afford to always provide money for things when I was a student, but the college stepped in, and the college gave me a bursary, which allowed me to go to the university and have a college room and all that sort of thing. So that was really wonderful. And the guy who funded it, a philanthropic donor, he then decided that he wanted to do more, and he wanted to establish an office to help students from disadvantaged and underrepresented backgrounds gain more places at the university. This is something that Oxford University is very, very keen to do. A lot of good work being put in to try and diversify the intake, make sure that it's an opportunity available for everyone. And so they invited me back to fill that post. So it was a real kind of wonderful kind of life in full circle. So I had this bursary as a student, and now I was able to go back and work again with that wonderful team to make those opportunities more available to everyone else. And one of the things I did was I founded an access program called Floriat, which still runs at Balliol College. You can Google it. And this is my first intake of Floriateers, as they were known. And so I spent 5 years at the university working on access and admissions. And this is where I really learned my craft of how to support students to make competitive applications. And I'm very pleased to say that of the people pictured here, half of them got offers at Oxford and Cambridge after working on the programme. So for those of you who may be thinking about Oxford or Cambridge, you'll know that the application statistics is usually about 1 in 5, 1 in 6 chance of getting a place, statistically, depending on the subject. But overall about 1 in 5, and 50% got places. So it was great, a real achievement. So then I left Oxford and I moved to King's College London, which some of you might be interested in as an institution. And there I ran a large team. So there were about 17 of us on the team, and we were all doing access work. So working with underrepresented young people, working with different organisations to try and encourage people to apply, making sure that people can put forward their best application. And this is me working with another organisation that I'm involved in, which is called the Amos Bursary. And this was a wonderful conference that we ran at King's, and yeah, it was a great experience. So I was there for 2 years, and then I set up Varsity Scholars, which is what I'm doing now. And I set up Varsity Scholars to really try and help individual applicants make competitive UCAS applications to institutions like Oxford, like King's, like LSE. And I partner with, as I said, schools and organisations and individuals to help with them drafting, in particular, personal statements, which is one of my areas of expertise. So just as a bit of a headline, I wanted to share with you, before we move on to talk more about personal statements, I wanted to share with you 3 of my top tips for success. And this is not just success at school and getting into university, but also in life. So we're going very philosophical now. It's 10 to 12, so we'll get philosophical early. So here's what, in my years of experience and working with young people, these are the things that I have found have made a difference. First one is to take control of your own application, your own decision making, and really ask yourself, what is the next right move for me? What is the next correct step I can take? What's the next thing that I can do? So ask for help, get expertise, and by all means kind of look to get input from other people, particularly people who are positive and trying to help you. But ultimately, you have to make your own decisions on your university application, on what you do at university, on your job. You've got to really take control of your own life and agenda, and really think about where you want to be and what you're going to do to get yourself there. So don't wait around for someone to tell you what the next step is. This is something I see a lot, actually, particularly with younger students. Something I see a lot in schools at the moment, which is a real passivity among a lot of the young people, which is they're sort of waiting to be told, do this, do that, don't do that. And it doesn't really instill a great deal of confidence, which is my sort of, one of my observations and something that concerns me. And I know that on Migrant Leaders, it's all about ownership, and it's all about taking your career and your life in your own hands and really empowering you to move forward, which is one of the reasons I'm so thrilled to, be a partner with Migrant Leaders and to be on the advisory board. But, really think to yourself, what do you want to do and how are you going to get there? And then pull people around you that are going to support you to do that. So the next one is done is better than perfect. I'm just going to admit a couple more people as we've got a couple of people coming in. Lovely. Done is better than perfect. This is a mantra for life. If you wait to do something because you want it to be absolute perfection, and you delay and delay and delay starting something because you feel you're not ready to start, you will never get anything done. And this is particularly true actually when you go to university as a student. If you've got an essay or a maths paper, you've just got to get going with things. You've got to make progress. You've got to move things forward. So take action, don't delay. Another way of phrasing this is perfection is the enemy of progress. If you're waiting for something to be perfect, it never will be. Whether it's an essay or a personal statement or a presentation you're going to give, you've got to just learn through doing and make things better through each iteration. So don't feel confined by waiting for something to be perfect before you put it out there. It will just never get going. So always look to make progress, always look to take action to get things moving in the right direction. And here's a final tip from me. This is something that I have found in life, is that there are 2 types of people. There are radiators and there are drains. So some people, I'm sure you all have examples of people like this in your life. When you see them, you just feel happy. And even if you're having a bad day or they're having a bad day, they're a positive person. They always lift you up. They always make you feel like you can do things. They're just a positive person to be around. And when you want support or help, or you want to have a chat with someone, those are the people you go to. And then there are other people, perhaps you may know some of them from school or from around your community, where every time you speak to them, you leave feeling exhausted and drained of energy, and you think, oh my goodness. What you want to do is make sure that you can pull as many radiators around you as possible, people who are going to lift you up, support you, be encouraging. And that doesn't mean that they're all going to be yes people, and they're all going to tell you you're great all the time, because they won't. And real radiators are usually people that will be honest with you, but they have your best interest at heart. Drains are people who don't make you feel good, don't make you feel lifted up. So what you want to do in life is move more towards people who are encouraging and supporting you, and move away from people who are not doing that, who are not making you feel empowered. So avoid being the smartest person in the room. Surround yourself with people who are encouraging you and moving you forward in the right way, and you won't go far wrong. So those are my bits of COD philosophy for you this morning. So thank you very much for listening to that sort of keynote. I hope that gives you a bit of a sense of what I'm about, where I'm from, why I'm in this, why I think it's so important that you all feel that your university application is the best it can be. And now I think we're going to move on to the next section, which is around, let's get into the nitty gritty. Let's do some troubleshooting on personal statements. Fawzia or Elham, if you're on the line, would you like me to move into this section now, or would you like me to take a break? Ooh, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Hi, Kate. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
If you're happy to carry on, I think it's a good point to carry on.
Absolutely. Right, so guys, we're going to move on now. Troubleshooting on personal statements. So it'd be really interesting to get a sense from you guys about where you are on your personal statements, and in terms of just going to have a quick look. Chats, here we go, this is what we want. So would anyone like to just pop in the chat kind of where they are in terms of personal statements? Have you got a draft? Are you happy with your draft? Do you have nothing written down? So by all means, just send me a quick message on the chat. We're going to be using the chat a lot in this section, so you might as well get used to posting on it now. Aha, lovely. So here we go. Third draft. Wow, Jessica, you're on your third draft. That is impressive. Third draft, Mia, well done. Hussein's got a draft, but it's not great. Never mind. Draft, but not happy with it, says Princess. Fine. Third draft. Monique has completed a first draft. Brilliant. Okay, so you're all sort of on the path to great things. Oh, Helma, Yosef are yet to start, so not yet on the path to great things, but we'll get you there. Lancelot, first draft. Michelle's a slow waffle. Haven't started it, says Marie. Yeah, so kind of mix of things. So this section of the conference today, we're going to talk about personal statements, but we're going to do it in the form of a Q&A. I will remind you that the masterclass, my personal statement masterclass, is available to all migrant leaders. And so I would encourage you to go and have a look at that masterclass if you haven't already. We're actually migrating it at the moment from one platform onto another. So it'll be available for you early next week, and we'll let you have the link to that as soon as that's available. Detailed plan. Ruth has sections but not a draft. Yeah, so everyone's kind of started work. Most people have started work but not really kind of got it into good shape yet. So what I'd like to do is get your questions really about how, you know, what are your issues? What are you worried about? What are your concerns with your personal statement? And really kind of use this time to kind of latch on to my expertise and get some advice on your draft. So I have a few questions here that are kind of standard questions that I'm asked a lot by people. So I'm going to start there, but what I would really like is your questions in the chat box. So please share with me any questions that you have about your personal statement, about drafting it, about what to include, what to exclude. And we'll really get into it, and I hope that we'll be able to use this time together. We've got about half an hour to really kind of get into your own experience in the drafting, and to really answer your questions and give you some guidance. So let's have a quick look then at some of the standard questions that I am most often asked. So the first one is, when should I write your personal statement? So you need to be drafting it now. and you absolutely need to have it done by the time you go back to school in September. You do not want to be going back into year 13, most of you, in September without your draft written. Year 13 is hard enough without having to rewrite personal statement drafts at the same time as doing other things. So you really want to be getting it done over the summer and using the time over the summer to get that draft into really good shape. Now, come September, what you might do is realise that you've still got a few changes that you want to make, you've got a bit of extra reading you want to include, anything like that, and that is absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine, that's no problem at all. So of course you can make changes and you can tweak things, of course, in September, but you really want to make sure that it's in good shape by then. You know, I think that's really important. So, what should you say in your personal statement? So, with your personal statement, it should be A, personal to you. It should be B, academic in focus, and this is the real key. A personal statement is not like an American essay for a university or application. So you really want to be putting in things that are academic in focus and related to the course that you're applying to. So let's say you're applying for economics. You want to use the time on your personal statement, use the words in your personal statement, that space available, to talk about why you want to do economics, what you've done to support your application for economics, etc. So that's what a personal statement is all about, and that is what universities will be looking for, in particular the more competitive institutions. So if you're applying for a top uni like an LSE or a UCL or Warwick or somewhere like that, they are going to want to see what you've done to actually evidence your interest in a particular subject, and that's going to be what differentiates you from another applicant. So we have a question from Ruth on the chat, and thank you, Ruth. I've heard mixed opinions about adding core curricula on a medicine personal statement, as most people do the same subjects. Should we just write more about supercurricular? Ruth, that's a really good question, and you get extra points for using terms like core and supercurricular. I think you've probably taken my masterclass, so well done. So yes, that's a really, really excellent question. And yes, I think it's broadly the answer to your question is yes, you should write more about supercurricular if you have it. And given that you're a medical applicant, yes, I think if you've got more supercurricular, by which I mean those additional extra things that you've done outside of school, then you should absolutely use that instead. It might be worth using something from your curriculum. If you have an example, you might want to use something in there just to show that your schoolwork is related to and affecting your decision to move forward. So it might be an experiment that you've done, or something, a discussion that you've had in class around medical ethics, for example. It might be something your teachers recommended you do. It might be a personal project or an EPQ or something like that. I think it's nice to show as an applicant that you are thinking about your subject at different stages and at different levels. So talking about something you've done in school as part of the curriculum that's inspired you to go further and study medicine, I think is going to be really, really helpful. But I absolutely agree with you that if you've got a lot of good supercurricular content there, that is going to be more important. What you might want to do, Ruth, is if you've packed your personal statement full of supercurricular, you might want to just give some thought to stuff you've done at school and how it might affect or inspire your decision to study medicine. The reason I say that is because they might ask you about it in an interview. Medicine, you're likely to be called to an interview, and you know, a good opening gambit from an admissions tutor in medicine might be, okay, well, you studied chemistry. Can you talk me through the steps of a particular experiment? Can you talk me through why you think that's relevant? You know, what are the skills of a medic and how have you learned those in your A-level course, etc., etc. So use the time to at least think about how you can make those connections, even if ultimately you don't include it in your personal statement. Balaji, how can you not mention the subject that you're applying to when you apply for joint honours and single honours? Aha! Good question, Balaji. That's a great one. So, Balaji, if you're on the line, would you mind telling me, just for example, what subject you are applying to for joint honours and single honours, because that might help. So if you want to include that there. But yes, this is a really good question from Balaji, which is basically that there are lots of students who are applying for either a joint honours degree, so it might be, you know, maths and computer science or history and economics, where they are applying for one particular subject at 4 universities, but they might be applying for a joint school subject in the others. Balaji, so chemistry with management, chemistry, or chemistry with medicinal chemistry. Wow, gosh, that is a really interesting area of study. So, Balaji, this is what I would recommend you do. First thing to say is that universities on the whole are aware that they might offer a different course to the standard. So the first thing to say is that if you do mention the subject name, that's not a kind of death knell for your application. They're not going to be worried about that. They're going to be positive. And, you know, if you're a university that offers a degree in chemistry with management, that is probably quite a unique course, and the academics are going to know that. They know that most students will probably just apply for standard chemistry, and then they will get some applicants for chemistry with management, but they're not expecting to read personal statements that are geared specifically to chemistry with management, because it is quite a niche course. So the first thing is let's kind of, you know, relax a bit, because universities are going to be aware of this. They're not going to hold you to a really high standard that you can't meet. But here is my advice. One of the ways that you can avoid doing this, using the names of the subject, is to talk in broad terms. So instead of saying, I would like to apply for chemistry because, you could say something along the lines of, now this is obviously going to be completely completely rubbish, Balaji, off the top of my head, but you could say something like, you know, I first became interested in the study of applied science when, or I am particularly interested in the molecules that make up life sciences. I mean, that's absolute rubbish, so obviously you wouldn't say that, but do you sort of get the drift? You sort of get what I'm saying? So what you can do is you can speak in broad terms rather than naming the subject outright. So one of the ways to start with that, Balaji, is to think, okay, well, what are the kind of core tenets of the subject? And you can do this actually by looking at prospectuses online, because they'll often have a little paragraph at the top that tells you what the study of each subject is. Like the study of chemistry is the study of organisms and how they affect, you know, the study of science or the human body, or, you know, how we came to being, and all that sort of thing. So you can borrow from prospectuses the kind of core tenets of the subject. And then what you can do is draw arcs across that. So you, for example, are interested in chemistry, and also chemistry with medicinal chemistry. So what you could say is, you know, I'm particularly interested in how the study of disease can be, you know, is founded in the knowledge garnered from my A-level chemistry, or something like that. So it's harder to do that. It requires a lot of thought, and it requires some linguistic gymnastics, which means you're going to have to sit and really think about what words you use, what language, what terminology. But it is possible to do it, and it's possible to do it really well. And actually what you'll find is that if you do enough work on the language and tailoring the language, that you will end up with a really killer personal statement at the end. You know, you will be really pleased with it, because it will be much more powerful than the average. So I hope that helps. And that applies, you know, not just to Balaji and his Balaji and the chemistry, management chemistry, and chemistry with medicinal chemistry. But it also applies to any subject that you might be applying to, where you're applying across different subjects and different combinations. So you might want to think about that in your own study as well. I'm just going to let some more people in. Ovi in the waiting room. Lovely. So we've got a question here from Jessica. Can you please give examples of the type of supercurricular activities that would be good to include in personal statements? Well, Jessica, that really depends on the subject that you are interested in applying for. Do you want to just give me the subject that you're applying for, Jessica, and I'll be able to give you a more tailored response to that. So if you're able to tell me what subject you're applying to. But with supercurricular, there are a range, economics, law. Thanks, Jessica. So when you're thinking about supercurricular, you want to think across a very broad range of types of study that you could do. So, for example, the obvious one is wider reading. So books and articles. So that is a really obvious thing that you can do. But books and reading and audiobooks are not the only thing that you guys could do. So you could think about obvious ones are things like work experience, summer schools, taster days, but all of those are basically out at the moment because of lockdown. So let's scrap those for a moment. Let's think about things that you can actually do at home at the moment. So you could obviously read a book, read an article, listen to an audiobook. You could watch the news. You could read insightful journalism in a newspaper or a magazine. You could listen to a radio show or a podcast. You could watch a lecture online. You could watch a documentary or a film. You could speak to people in the area that you're interested in and get some insight. You could do some sort of experiment or something like that at home, or you could feed into a national conversation about something. So for example, usually around this time of year, there are kind of big data gathering exercises around things like what nature you can see in your garden, for example. So you could do a bit of bird watching from your window, or you could try and think about, you know, stargazing, for example. If you live in a city centre, what can you see? And things like that are actually really underutilised on personal statements, because it's actually a great way to feed into a really large and substantive piece of research. Talking about research, you could also either take part in something like I've suggested, or you could read some latest research. The news is obviously something that you need to be up on, particularly if you're a medic or a nurse or a lawyer or something like that. You need to know what's going on in the world and what's the latest in your subject and your area of thinking. So Jessica, for yourself, economics and law. So Jessica, are you thinking that you're sort of torn between the two subjects, or you want to apply for a joint school? Because that's a sort of slightly different thing. But law is a really good one, because law is a really easy one to do lots of extracurricular for, because you can follow what's going on in the courts. So I would recommend, if you're applying for law, that you find a case or something that's going on at the moment legally that is of interest to you, and I would read up on it and I would follow it, and I would, you know, make sure that you're aware of what the latest developments are in that particular case. And the more interesting and the more kind of unusual, the better. So you want to try and avoid doing things that every other applicant is going to talk about. You want to be informed on those topics, but you don't want them leading your personal statement, because it doesn't differentiate you really in any way. So for example, if you were applying for medicine, some of you may well be, if you're applying for medicine, you obviously need to know about coronavirus. Same is true if you're applying for biomedical science or nursing. You know, you can't turn up to an interview at LSE or King's College London and they say, oh, okay, so tell me about, you know, coronavirus and what's been going on, and you say, oh, I have absolutely no earthly idea, it's completely passed me by. You know, that is not really acceptable. On the other hand, everyone's going to know about coronavirus, obviously, so you don't want to attach your application to that one issue. You want to be able to talk about other things as well, because that will start to differentiate you from other people. So Jessica, economics is a great one, and there are some really good podcasts, there are some really good radio shows looking at economics, looking at fact checking, looking at numbers. So I would really recommend that you have a look at some of those, and sort of build your statement out in that way. I think that'd be really, really, really powerful. So Elham has commented about work experience in companies. Smith and Nephew STEM Careers Deep Dive in July, Kantar Marketing Consultancy Virtual Work Experience. Yeah, there's absolutely loads. Deep Dive Engineering and the Diamonds Mining Business at Anglo American. Yeah, I mean, if you guys have done some of these things, they're going to be really interesting to include. And if you haven't done them, you can definitely keep on top of it and look for opportunities. I think that when you're writing your personal statement in particular, you need to sort of think about things on different levels. So there might be a really great piece of work experience or a visit that you've done that you can use. But if you haven't done that, think about what you can actually do at home. Do you have access to a public library? Do you have some books at home? If you have internet connection, which I obviously assume you do because you're all on this call, get online and look at podcasts from different universities or recordings of public lectures that are all online on YouTube. You can go onto university websites and find the research. Universities will publish what their latest research is on a particular area. There'll be news things. So they'll say, you know, we have recently, you know, found a cure for X, or we've recently done a big study into Y, and this is what it says. So have a look for those things and attach to those things, because they're really interesting for a start. They're really current, and also they're things that you can do easily from home. It costs you no money, not a lot of time, and they will look really impressive on a personal statement, because what tutors want is students who are engaging with the academic subject in mind. They're not looking for you to have, you know, done loads, and they're not expecting you to have, you know, done 3 weeks of work experience or anything like that, particularly during lockdown. But they are looking for students who are engaged and are taking those steps. So Mia, what is your opinion on having a fictional text in your personal statement? I'd like to do law. Do you think having books like Bleak House by Charles Dickens? That is a very, very interesting question, Mia. Here's where it comes down. I'm thinking it's a really interesting question. Here's where I come down on it. Your personal statement is not very long. It's only 500 to 550-ish words. So it's really not very long at all. You really want to use as many of those words as possible to talk about the subject that you want to apply to. So in your case, law. If you then use 50 words or 25 words talking about literature, even though there are obviously legal connotations to a lot of Dickens's work, it's not really working for you in the way that you need it to. So I would suggest that you don't include it in the bulk of your personal statement. But to me, it sounds like you are, you know, a good reader and you enjoy literature, you like reading. I would actually drift that down into the extracurricular section. So I'm really passionate about law. Here's why. Here are some of the things that I've done on law. Here's some of the reading that I've done. Here's a lecture that I've looked at online. Law. In my spare time, I really enjoy reading. My favourite book is Bleak House by Charles Dickens. I also like, you know, rugby, netball. I volunteer, I'm part of the Migrant Leaders Development Programme, etc., etc. So then a paragraph at the bottom that says a bit about the other things that you're interested in. I don't think that Bleak House, for example, that's the example you've given, I don't think that works hard enough for you on your application to be worthy of the words that you would need to analyse it correctly. So for me, I would actually just shove that down into the extracurricular section, which is other things I like doing. I like reading, I like playing sport, I like music, etc. And I would keep it out of the core law section of the personal statement. That's a really good question. Fawzi is recommending webinars. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of publicised on Eventbrite and LinkedIn. Those could be really great, particularly if you're applying for a sort of a vocational subject. So if you're applying for something like business or management or economics, or something that has a sort of, obviously all academic subjects have a tangible link to society, but if you have something that is more transferable, directly transferable to the workplace, webinars are going to be really powerful, because what you've got at the moment is a lot of high business leaders who are sat at home on webinars, and a lot of them are giving their time to talk about their business, their organisation, the work that they're doing. A lot of researchers now running webinars to talk about the latest bit of scientific research they've done in a particular field. So, you know, definitely a webinar is a really great one. And also it gives you the opportunity to ask questions, which is really powerful, because then what you can do is you can say, I went on this webinar with expert whoever. I asked a question about X, Y, and Z, and they told me this. I was either really satisfied with their answer, really unsatisfied with their answer. So I went away and read this, or had a look at their research paper, or you know, did some more research on my own on this topic, and here is what I think about it. So it's a really nice way of showing that you're really engaged and engaging in the subject going forwards. So Elham's put a link here for work experience. If you've got friends and family and you know, who'd benefit from having some mentoring and the opportunities, then please do encourage them to apply for the development program, because Elham and all of the Migrant Leaders team are always on the lookout for bright and ambitious young people to work with. So please do share that. So Jessica, could you recommend the best way to start a personal statement, and also suggest what kind of things are best to mention in the introduction? Yes, Jessica, right, you've hit my favourite topic. Well, favourite topic, not so favourite topic, depends how you look at it. It's a really good question, because this is a major mistake that people make on their personal statement. Often applicants feel that they need to write an opening paragraph. That's the first mistake. And they feel that in that opening paragraph, they need to say something really profound. That is the second mistake. Neither of those things are true. And what you want to do in your opening line, I stress line, maybe 2 lines max, is just literally open your statement and then jump into the main content. You will not believe the drivel I have to read on people's personal statements in their opening paragraphs. It's nearly always the weakest section on any personal statement. And most academic tutors literally cross the first paragraph straight off and just jump down and start reading from halfway down the page, because it is so poor. So obviously you guys want to avoid that completely. You certainly do not want to be writing a load of rubbish that academics just cross out and don't even bother to read, because that goes completely against what we're trying to achieve here, which is writing a really impactful personal statement. And if you write something rubbish, it's not going to be very impactful. So what we want to do is you want to start just with some really clean, straightforward, short opening line or lines, opening sentence. So you want to say something like, I have decided to apply for a law degree because I feel really passionate about representing people in court. I have a particular interest in criminal law, tort law, etc., and look forward to furthering my study and understanding of this subject at university. Full stop. Done. Move on. Next. Then we go into the super curricular section. This is where you get all your credit. The problem with opening paragraphs, one of the main problems with people's opening paragraphs is they're really long, and students tend to get tied in circles in their opening paragraph. And then what happens is they use all their words up there. Bearing in mind we've only got 550 words-ish. They use all their words up here. They're not very good. They don't really say anything very profound. And then they've not got enough room to actually say all the good stuff that they want to include, which is obviously what we're looking to do. So your opening lines should be really simple, really clear and direct, and they should just be straightforward. If you take one word away, straightforward. You shouldn't look to do anything more than just open the statement and then get out of that section as quickly as possible and into the main content of your statement. I would recommend, Jessica, I would recommend to everyone on the call, don't write your opening sentence first, write it last. When I work with students on personal statements, I never get them to start with writing opening lines and paragraphs. It's the last thing we do together is opening lines and concluding lines. You want to get your core sections drafted, and then you just want to have a quick introductory line. I'm particularly interested in the study of chemistry because I'm really interested in understanding how the world works, full stop. I'm particularly interested in the study of organic chemistry. Look forward to doing this more at university. Next. So really, really efficient use of time and words. I honestly once read a personal statement for medicine that said, I wanted to be a doctor since I was a fetus, was the opening line of this student's personal statement. Now, obviously that gave us all a good laugh, but that's not really what you are going for when you're writing a personal statement. So one that happens a lot actually, Jessica, which it happens actually more in the arts and the humanities, is that people start with a quote. I imagine this happens actually quite a lot with law as well. People put a quote, said, oh, Martin Luther King once said, I have a dream, and my dream is to study law at LSE. You definitely don't want to be writing anything like that. For a start, you don't want to open with someone else's thoughts. It's your personal statement, not theirs. So you don't want to be quoting somebody else in your opening lines. But second, it's just not effective in the way that you might hope it would be. One of the problems is that students tend to overreach in their opening statements and opening lines. They feel a pressure or an expectation to give a really profound reason for why they want to study French at university. But that's not what academics are looking for. Academics aren't expecting that you've had a sort of lightning bolt moment where suddenly you've realised that your life's mission is to study geography at the University of Hull. They're not expecting that. And so it sort of feeds into this idea that you've got to have a sort of really deep reason for studying a particular subject at university. Now, some people do, and some of you may have a really deep and profound reason for studying a particular subject, in which case, let's use that, let's leverage it and explain why that's the case. But certainly don't feel any pressure to fabricate one for your opening paragraph. That's a real common error. So thank you, Jessica. You've got me on to my one of my big bugbears in personal statement writing. So I hope that was helpful anyway. But if you have a look at my masterclass, I've got a whole section on opening sentences, closing sentences, and I've got some examples as well about what you can include. So do take a look at that, because I think that'd be helpful to you. So Marie asks, what are some of the cliches we should avoid? Well, I think I've given a couple of examples there. Quotes, thinking that you've got to give really profound reasons for something. Just being interested in a subject is enough. It is enough, and for academics it is, because they spend their whole lives studying very niche areas just because they're interested in it. So they like to work with students who are just committed and interested and engaged with the subject. That's what they're looking for. Some of the cliches, so another cliche that you should avoid is, it's not so much a cliche, but it's just a sort of misunderstanding, is thinking that everything on your personal statement has to be big and shiny. So the sense that some students feel that unless they've got, a really jazzy piece of work experience, or they've got a really kind of, really kind of high tech, really thoughtful view on like the latest X, Y, and Z, that they're not, they've not got anything to offer in their personal statement. That's not true at all. Actually, it's far better to just have a few small, well-chosen examples that you can analyze, that you can give a view of, and then, it just evidences your expertise. So I'm just going to let someone in. So I think that's another cliche, or another misstep, is to think that you've got to be really impressive in every area. You don't have to be that impressive. You just have to be thoughtful and committed. So it's all about clever choice of examples and how you deploy them and the language you use around those. So Elham said, be really selective about online courses and webinars you use or mention. They need to be high quality, done by industry and academic leaders, and showcase brand or content that we've seen of value to your objectives. That is absolutely right, absolutely right. I think that, particularly during lockdown, but in an age at the moment where anyone can get on social media, anyone can do a webinar, anyone can record something and put it out there, anyone can write a blog and share it. The hunt for quality content is really on at the moment, and you need to be quite discerning in your taste and sort of think very carefully about where you find things. And that's one of the reasons that I would encourage you to go to university websites, because for example, Oxford University has its own podcast series. It's available online, it's completely free. So if you go to the Oxford University website, for example, and you go to the section for podcasts, they have a whole range of podcasts available across a range of different academic subject areas. So you can use that, and that sort of almost comes like quality assured, because if it comes from a university, you know that it's going to be more credible. You might not always agree with everything they say, but it's going to be more credible. It's going to be from academics that are salaried at the university. So that's one thing. And don't feel that if you're not interested in Oxford or you're not applying to Oxford, don't feel that you can't use the material. Of course you can. You don't even have to say it's Oxford University. You just say, I listened to a podcast by Professor so-and-so on this topic, and I found it interesting because. So don't feel that like if you're applying to LSE, you've got to absorb all of LSE's content. In fact, that's probably not a good idea. What you want to do is look at all the good quality content, pick things that interest you, and then include them and incorporate them in your personal statement. So I think we're about to go to a lunch break, but is there any final questions from anyone? I think we've covered the ones here. There's a final one that I'm often asked, which I think would be helpful just to cover, which is how many examples do you need to include in your personal statement? I would say you want to have 2 or 3 super curricular examples, 1 or 2 core curricula from your A-levels or IB, and then you can have more in extracurricular because you're not really going to analyse them. You're just going to sort of more list them in the extracurricular section. So you can have 5 or 6 different examples there because you're not really going to have to give any explanation or analysis on them. So it's slightly different. So I would say really you're looking for kind of 5, 6, 7, maximum sort of 8 sort of course related examples that you can leverage. The question really then is, well, how much stuff do you have to read or listen to or engage with before you get 4 or 5 really good personal statement worthy examples? And that really depends on what you're reading and what you're doing. But you know, there might be things that you engage with that you think, oh, actually, I'm not going to include this. I don't like it. I don't understand it. I'm not sure how relevant it is, etc. So you might filter down at that stage. But what you want to do is give examples and then give some analysis around them. So you only really need 4 to 6, maybe 8 maximum good quality examples of things that you can include. So Elham said, if your career choice is clearly linked to certain companies such as accountancy or engineering, then look at their social media websites. Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, because they often will run great events. They'll have free materials. They also will often have like a news website where they'll say what their latest work was or their case or a new development in that area or how they're responding to certain things. And that's really good to kind of just bank that in your mind, know what's going on. And then you could talk about that in an interview if you get called to an interview. Jessica, would you steer away from saying that you play an instrument? No, I wouldn't steer away from that at all. I would definitely include that. Jessica, in your extracurricular activities, I think that's great. So anything that you do like that, you play an instrument, you're a prefect, you like listening to music, you are a keen sports person, all of these things you should really include in extracurricular. And also, Jessica, what I would say is it's not about being like really good at it. I mean, if you are good at it, then that's great because that shows a degree of commitment. But it's also about just being someone who is interested in things. So you might actually include that you're learning something, that maybe you're not very good at it, but you're learning it. So, you know, you've decided that over the summer, you're going to learn French and you are using Duolingo to teach yourself French. Or you decided to take a gap year and train for running a half marathon because you want to prioritize your fitness. Or you decided that you'll set yourself a challenge that every day you're going to read 20 pages of a book, a fiction book. Or you decided that you want to read the whole works of Agatha Christie by this time next year, and that's what you're working on. So it doesn't always have to be, you know, jazzy and impressive. Actually, it can be fun, it can be light-hearted. It gives a sense of what you're about, and that's what's key. Oh, Elham, another great recommendation from Elham here. If you're applying for economics or finance, which I'm sure a lot of you will be, check the EY Item Club and their reports and podcasts. The Economist and the FT are relevant also. Yeah, very absolutely right. Hussein has asked, could you include if you're in the top 5% of a certain video game? Oh my goodness. Well, I won't pretend to know anything about gaming, Hussein. Hussein, I don't know. I don't know anything about it, but it sounds like, you know, you've been good at it. Yes, I would include it. Actually, if it's something you're proud of and something you worked hard to achieve, then I would include it. But be very careful what you say and what else you say in your personal statement, because what you don't want to give the impression is that you spend all your time gaming and not any time, you know, on your academic work. So I think you can definitely say that you enjoy gaming, and, you know, particularly proud was when you got in the top 5% of a particular video game. But then you also, but you don't want to make a big thing of it, and you want to make sure that you contextualize that with other things that you're interested in. So maybe you're also interested in music or sport, or you're involved in your local community in some way. You don't want to give the impression that all you do is sit at home on your computer. Because that will worry a lot of academics, because academics tend to be very concerned about students spending too much time on tech anyway. So I think they'll be concerned about that. But if you put it in the right way, it's all about putting it in contextually in the right way. I think it sounds good. And I mean, look, being in top 5% of anything is pretty impressive, right? So Jessica, are you going to go over the overall structure of a personal statement after lunch? No, Jessica, I'm not, because that is on my personal statement masterclass, which you have access to. So I'd recommend that you go on to the masterclass and make sure that you take that, and then you'll be walked through step by step. It's completely free, and you'll be walked through step by step what the structure of your personal statement should look like. So I would definitely recommend doing that next week. And following the step-by-step and looking through the workbook to get a general sense of that. So after lunch, we're going to come back and I'm going to talk you through what happens once you've written your personal statement, submitted it, and then how universities actually assess it. So we're going to do an activity with regards to that, and I'm going to talk to you about what universities are actually going to be looking for on your statement. So give you a little bit of insider advantage there. So we're going to come back, I think, after lunch. Now, Fawzia and Elham, we've run slightly over our allocated section here. Lots of good questions coming through. So when would you like people back from their lunch? Oh. Fawzia and Elham, you might be on mute.
Hello, Kate. Hello, everyone. Fawzia has kindly typed in the chat that can everyone please be back promptly at 1 p.m. Please use these opportunities working with us, everyone, to get used to working etiquettes and norms, and showing respect to each other, so that everybody's back at 1 o'clock promptly, please, and enjoy lunch.
Lovely. Well, I will see you all back here at 1 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kate. Thank you, everyone. Okay, everyone, welcome back. We are going to start again, and I believe Fawzia is co-hosting. So Fawzia, I will hand back to you. Thank you.
Hello everybody, I hope you all had a good lunch break. We're going to dive straight into the next session now. Kate has already put in the chat a document that she would like you to download so that you've got that in front of you and can be reading through that while she's talking. Towards the end, we'll do another Slido question to see what you think about those. So Kate, if I can hand over to you. You should be able to co-host.
Yeah, if you could make me a co-host, that would be great.
Elham, I think you might have to do that.
Okay, let's see. Let's see if I'm able to.
Yeah, lovely.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Right,
You're
so
very welcome.
back, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen with you so you've got this now. Oh, excuse me, I'm not going to play from the start. I want to play from. Here we go. Here we go. Right. Welcome back, everyone. So this section for the next sort of half hour or so is around how universities use your personal statement. So once you've written it, you've submitted it, what do universities then do with it, and how do they actually award places off the back of that? So for this section, I'm going to give you some sort of insight into how universities work, and then I'm also going to get you to have a look at the documents that I have linked in the chat. So hopefully you'll be able to access those and have a look at them. So first of all, just let me give you a bit of an overview. Universities use your personal statement to decide who gets offers at their institution. It's not the only thing that they use. They use a number of different criteria, including your GCSEs or equivalent, your predicted grades, your teacher reference, and any other key information on your UCAS form. So the personal statement is not the only thing that universities use, but it certainly is an important aspect, an important criteria. Some universities will make offers just off the back of your UCAS application, and other universities and other courses will make decisions based partly on that, and then also partly on interviews or aptitude tests that you might have to sit as well. So how do universities look at your personal statement and begin to make some of these admissions decisions? Well, the first thing they're looking for is your interest in the subject that you're applying to. So they're looking to fill their courses with applicants who have a real passion and interest for the subject that they've applied to. And the reason that's important to universities is twofold, really. First, that the academics teaching the course want to work with interested and motivated students. And the second thing is that they think that you're much more likely to stay on the course and to do well on the course if you're interested in what you're doing. So those are two kind of key factors for why interest in the subject is an important determinant of admissions decisions. The next thing on the list is suitability for your chosen course. And what that means is partly skill-based. So does this student evidence the kind of skills that we need for them to be good at this? So for example, if you were applying for English literature and on your personal statement you hadn't mentioned any books, there's going to be a red flag, isn't there? You're clearly not going to be the sort of student who likes to read a lot if you haven't evidence that in your personal statement. So suitability for your chosen course is a really important one. There is another element to this, which is that if you are an institution, a university, your course might be quite different to another university's course. It might be the same title, so it might be engineering, but you might specialise in general engineering, whereas they might specialise in mechanical engineering, for example. And so in your personal statement, if you're applying for a course like that, you need to make sure that where you're applying, your personal statement is geared towards that particular course or the courses that you're applying to. You don't want to get caught out by writing an application all about general engineering and how you're interested in electrical engineering, for example, and then apply to a course that is mechanical engineering, because you're just going to get rejected straight away. So assessing suitability for the course is something universities will do. They're also looking for motivated students. So they're looking for students who are not only interested in the subject, but also motivated to actually go and do something. It's not enough just to say, oh, I'm very interested in this. You actually have to be able to show that you're motivated to go further to do the work. And one of the ways that they will do that is evidence, so evidence of effort. So what have you read? What lectures have you been to? What work experience have you done? What have you actually done to go above and beyond to show that you're a motivated individual? Personal statements will also assess your writing ability. This is particularly important if you're applying for an essay-based subject. So the ability to write well, to write clearly, to write distinctly is important. So obviously you don't want to be submitting something with a lot of spelling errors or really poor English and poor writing. So that's something that you want to focus on and tidy up. They are also interested in some of your wider interests and wider information, and different universities will be more, some universities will be more interested in this than others. So it's important to sort of have that conversation with each university that you're applying to and get a sense of what they like to see. But all universities want students with a wide range of interests and enthusiasms. They're not looking for robots that are just going to sit at a desk and do maths 24/7. They're looking for students who are really passionate about maths, but also have other things going on as well. So they're looking to see if you have engaged with your subject in some way. So you've not just been a sort of passive recipient of things, you've actually engaged with what's in front of you. So work experience is a really good one, a good example of this. For example, if you have had the opportunity to do a work experience placement, the fact that you've done a work experience placement is frankly not that interesting or impressive in most cases. What is interesting and impressive is what you've learnt, what you've done, what you think about it, how you've engaged with that experience. So it's always important to draw out some of those qualities. And the final thing is attitude. So they'll be looking in your personal statement, as long as other things, for a positive attitude. And that doesn't mean that you have to always be passionate about everything, loving everything, everything's the best thing you've ever read or done. You can be discerning. You can say, well, I listened to this lecture, I didn't really understand it, or I didn't agree, or I didn't enjoy it, but I went away and I did this, read this book instead, and actually that really persuaded me X, Y, and Z. So it's about being a sort of student who is open, positive, discerning in their choices, someone who's going to be really a good person to work with overall. So those are some really key kind of areas that universities will be looking for in a personal statement. The next thing is if you were invited to an interview. This is another thing, another aspect of the application where your personal statement is going to become very, very important. So the first one is if you call to an interview, they might use your personal statement to get a sense of your interests. So let's say you were applying for history of art, for example. In an interview, they might say, oh, well, I see that you have a real passion for modern art. So, you've written about that in your personal statement. So let's have a conversation about it and see, see where we can get to in an interview. So they'll be looking at your personal statement to get a sense of what you're interested in, what you like, what you find enjoyable. And they will use that as a launch pad in the interview. So you want to put things on your statement that you are interested in and that you're happy to talk about. They'll also be interested in an interview at sort of the breadth and depth on your personal statement. So on the one hand, for most academic subjects, they're going to want to see that you have a broad sense of what the subject means, and a sense that, you know, there are aspects of the subject that you haven't studied yet. So history is a really good example of this. You may well have studied the civil rights movement in your history A level, but obviously there's a huge range of other historical topics and countries and areas and interests and periods which you haven't studied. And they're going to want to see that you are at least aware of that and that you have some concept of what it means to be a broad history student. That said, they're also going to want to test the depth. They're going to want to test, well, okay, you've studied civil rights at A level, so let's have a conversation about civil rights in a historical context, and let's try and ask some questions and get a sense of whether you really understand that. Sort of related to that, what they will spot is gaps in your personal statement. So actually, English literature is a very good example of this. Most English literature courses at university, not all of them, but most, will include an element of poetry, for example. But not many students and young people actually have studied a lot of poetry or are really passionate about that. So what they'll probably see on your personal statement is maybe that you haven't done a lot of poetry. So in the interview, they might ask you about that. They might say, well, you know, you've written about plays, you've written about fiction, you've written about non-fiction, you've written about, you know, modern literature, you've written about Old English literature. What you haven't written about is any poetry. So could you tell me, what poetry you've read or what you might be interested in? So they'll spot gaps and they'll go in on those. And so it's important that you've given some thought to what the gaps might be and what you can possibly say about that. Another thing at an interview that they'll be testing is your continued commitment since drafting your statement. So when you've written your personal statement, it doesn't end there. And if you go to an interview, they'll say, okay, well, I've got your personal statement. Thank you very much for sending that in. I see that you've read X, Y, and Z, or you've been to this lecture and you've done that. Why don't you tell me what you've done since drafting this that's not on your personal statement? So what else have you done recently? And if you've not got anything, it's not going to be very impressive. So you've got to show that you're continuing to learn and continuing to do things even once you've left the personal statement. So that can be a really advanced way, a clever way of showing that you're continually engaged. They're going to test your intellectual flexibility too in an interview. So if you've written something in your personal statement about economics, for example, and you've said that you're particularly interested in a particular model, they're going to say, okay, well, let's get a whiteboard out. Let's draw this model. Let's talk about it. What if I change these numbers? Or what situation, if we put you in this context, how would that model change? So they're going to want to test your understanding and your ability to flex and respond to different circumstances. And then finally, they're going to test your ability to construct and defend an argument. So you might say something in your personal statement, you might say that you feel that a particular area of law is really important and is underutilized. So they'll say, okay, well, why do you think that? What reading have you done? What if I told you this? Does that change your interpretation of what you've said? And they'll be looking for you to construct and defend arguments. Now, obviously, interviews work differently at different universities, and they work differently depending on what course you're going for as well. But these are some of the broad themes that you'll see emerge across interviews. So a bit of advice for you. Be honest. Demonstrate that breadth and depth. Check the course structure and the modules of the universities that you're applying to and make sure that you are in line with that. Read your statement aloud once you've done a good draft. Have a guess at what the obvious questions might be. Don't be really boring and obvious on your personal statement because then they'll be less likely to ask you questions. And try and make it interesting. So try and make the things on your statement interesting to an academic so that they do ask you a question on your personal statement, and then you're in a stronger position because you're on a topic that you already know about. So if anyone has any questions at this point, I'm very happy to take some questions. Oh, excuse me. Here we go. Right. chat. So if you have any questions, I'm very happy to answer those as we go through in this next section. But what I would like is to move on to an activity. So we've got about 10 minutes left in this particular section. So what I'd like you to do is to go to the chat, and if you scroll to the top, you'll see that I have linked personal statement examples, and I believe these were sent to you in advance. So if you go to download that document, I hope you can all download that successfully. There are 3 example personal statements on that list. These are all real examples from students that I have worked with. They're taken at different stages of the drafting process. What I would like you to do is to go through and read those 3 examples. Then I'm going to ask you via Slido, 40 is going to help with this, but I would like you to decide which of those 3 examples you think is the best. So which one do you think is most impressive? Which one do you think is going to most impress an admissions tutor? And then we'll use Slido to get your feedback. So I'm going to give you until 1:30, so just under 10 minutes. I want you to read the 3 statement examples, and then we'll come onto Slido at 1:30 and get your thoughts and your feedback. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to go on to mute. Everyone got the download successfully? Hope so. Marie, in the chat, if you go up to the top of the chat, Elham opened by saying we'll wait for 2 minutes to admit everyone back, and then I have shared a document there, personal statement examples, at the top of the chat box.
Can I just interject? If that's not working, let us know and I'll put another link in.
Right, I wonder if it's because some people have joined the call late. They couldn't see my comment. Let me add it in. I'll add it in again into the chat, and then hopefully you'll have it. Okay, I've just sent it again, everyone. So have a read through each of the 3 examples, and then we're going to go to Slido, and you can let me know which one you think is the best. Fawzia, do the students have access to the Google Drive?
I'm just trying to get a link that I can paste into the chat. So bear with me. Okay, I've put another link in there. People want to try downloading from that link. They should get access to the drive.
Okay, good. That's working for me, Fawzia, so it should be working for everyone else.
Great. And I just need to find...
I'll give everyone another 5 minutes. So let's do until 1:35. 1:35 to read those and form an opinion of which one is best. You've got 5 minutes left.
And people should be able to vote on Slido once they've... Okay, somebody's voted for economics.
final minute or so. So if you could finish reading the 3 statements and then go over to the Slido, which Fawzia has kindly arranged, and vote for which statement you think is the best: accounting, economics, or biochem. Okay, everyone. So, bit of an activity in speed reading there. Fawzia, are you able to, is this the screen to see how everyone has voted?
I
see here.
Can you see that?
Yeah. Lovely. So,
is that still sharing?
It's just loading at the moment. It's just loading. So would anyone like to put in the chat why they voted the way they did, why they thought, and it seems from the poll results that you felt that 10 people voted for economics. They thought the economic statement was the best. So would anyone like to share with me on the chat why they thought that? That'd be very interesting. Anyone want to share any ideas as to why they voted for economics, why they thought that the economic statement was the best? I think it's a very interesting outcome on the poll. Of those 3 statements, the economics statement is by far the worst. By far. The statement that is the best is the accounting personal statement. The economics personal statement is not where it needs to be for applications to the most competitive institutions. So Balaji, thank you for sharing your thoughts. You said it made you feel interested in the subject, it seemed really engaged and motivated to study it. Well, I would agree with that. I think it's certainly not a bad personal statement. I've definitely read a lot worse. It's certainly, I'm glad it made you feel interested in economics. They certainly were a very engaged student and they're very motivated as well. But the statement is not effective in what it's looking to do from a university point of view. So I think it's very, very interesting that all of you thought the economic statement was the best, when in fact it is the worst of the 3. The best statement by some margin is the accounting personal statement. That is a much stronger and more effective personal statement overall. And so I would really recommend that those of you that haven't, go away and look at my masterclass on personal statement writing, take that masterclass, because if you feel that the economic statement is the strongest, what that indicates to me is that you have made certain assumptions about what you think your own statement should sound like. And if you try and model or mimic it in that way, it's probably not going to have the impact that you're looking for, probably not have the outcome that you're looking for. So I would really encourage you to go back and have a look at the masterclass, reflect on some of the lessons there, and perhaps have another look at those 3 examples as well, in light of what I've said, and see if you can see why the accounting statement is the strongest, and why the economics of the 3 is the weaker of the 3, and perhaps see if you see it in a new light. That'd be very, very interesting. But we're going to move on. We're going to move on from this to actually focus more on you rather than looking at other people's statements, and actually focus on your own application going forwards and what you want to achieve. So in this activity, we're going to focus on goal setting, which is very, very important, and particularly important at the moment. Obviously, we're still in lockdown, starting to come out of lockdown, but effectively going into the summer holidays. And so it's thinking about how you can use your time and your energy over the summer, really harness it to get where you need to be in September. So we're looking at September as a sort of hard deadline for where you need to know where you want to go, what you want to do. You've done a draft statement, you're really ready to move forward. So goal setting at this particular moment is really powerful because it's going to help you get on the right track moving forward into next academic year. So I work with students to set SMART goals, and some of you may be familiar with this already. But SMART goals are set 3 ambitious goals for yourself over the summer. This is what we're going to do now in an activity. Each goal should be SMART. That is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. Each goal should be a super curricular example that you can use on your UCAS personal statement or at an interview, so should be course related. So what we're looking to do in this activity is for you to think, how am I going to use my summer to develop activities and interests and reading and lectures and films and documentaries that I can use on my personal statement? So how am I going to use my time over the summer to make sure that I've got something really credible that I can use on my personal statement come September? So here are 3 examples of a SMART goal. So if you were a historian or a political sort of economic student, you might say, I will read, make notes and form an opinion on The Road to Serfdom by Hayek by the 15th of August. That would be one SMART goal. I'm going to read this book, I'm going to think about it, I'm going to make some notes, and I'm going to do it by August. Another one might be, I will visit the British Museum, or it could be a gallery, or it could be watch a film by the 1st of September, and I will be able to select, talk about 3 objects that most interest me. You can do that online. You don't have to physically go. You can visit the collection online. You might have a goal which is around doing an online course. So I will take the Harvard X MOOC on Hamlet by the end of the week, and I will be able to say and share three interesting things that I've learned on that MOOC. So what I would like you to do is to think about what goals and activities you have set for yourself. And Fawzia, I don't know if you're able to share a link to the Google Doc for the goal setting template. Aha!
I've just done
Here we
that.
go. So it's just there. So Fawzia's very kindly shared that with you in the chat. So if you go to that Google Doc in the chat, you will see a very, very simple Google, a very simple template for goal setting. It says, set 3 SMART goals for yourself to improve your university application. It reminds you what SMART stands for. And then there's space there to write those 3 goals. Now, obviously, you're very welcome to write in these boxes, but equally, if you've got pad of paper or you've got, you're on your laptop, you're obviously very welcome to make a note on your own. And then what we're going to do is ask you to share those on the Slido. So we're going to try and capture what your SMART goals are, and that way that we as a team will be able to help you and give you advice around how you can meet those goals. So I'm going to give you until 2 o'clock, and I would like hopefully 3, but at least 1 SMART goal from yourself, what you're going to do over the summer in preparation for your university application. And I'm going to be here on chat, so if anyone wants to message me or wants my advice while they're coming up with those SMART goals, I'll be here, so you can feel free to post in the chat and I'll pick up your message there. But I'm going to give you 15 minutes until 2 o'clock, to come up with 3 SMART goals. Off you go.
So Balaji, I'm just going to try and send that link to you again privately. Let me know if that works. Ah. Okay, looks like a few people are having problems getting that link to work, so I'm going to try it again.
Fawzia, if the link doesn't work, if we can't get the link to work, for those of you on the call who can't get the link to work, don't worry about it, because what you can actually do is I'll share it on my screen here, and you'll be able to just see the introduction of the document. So hopefully you should be able to see on my screen share there the outline of the document about what is a SMART goal. And then instead of writing it on the document, you can just write it on a piece of paper, or you can write it in Word, or you can write it on an email or something, depending on what you've got access to. You don't need to have the physical document to write on. You can actually just see it on the screen here, if that helps.
I think also in a short while, I will share the Slido screen again, and people will have a chance to type in some of their draft SMART polls in there so we can have a look at them. I'm sorry that I can't share the link with you properly. I'm not sure what's gone on then. Seems a bit odd because the first one did share. Okay, let me know when you think there is time to share the Slido activity, please.
I will. If anyone wants any help with their SMART goal, you can message me in the chat. Very happy to help. Okay, everyone, sort of final 5 minutes now of writing up your SMART goals. Fawzia, if you're able to share the Slido now, if you've written up a couple of your goals, if you want to put it onto the Slido, we'll be able to have a look and see what you're all working on, which has been great. I've been chatting to a few people privately over group chat, so if you've got any questions, you're welcome to message me and I'll come back to you with some advice. But Fawzia, yes, if you're able now to share the Slido, then hopefully we can see what people have.
Yeah. Can people see that?
Yeah, I can, Fawzia.
Excellent, thank you.
Wonderful. So I'm starting to see these coming through. This looks fantastic. So please do share your SMART goals. So I've read 2 new books about medicine by the end of August. So that's a really good one. I think what you want to do is you want to go away and find those 2 books. You know, think about what those 2 books are. And in a way, that's 2 SMART goals, isn't it? Because you've got 2 books, that's almost 2 SMART goals. I'd recommend, if you haven't already heard of it, a book called Factfulness by Hans Rosling, which is about it's about medicine, but it's slightly more complex than that. But it's really readable and light touch. It's absolutely fascinating. One of the best books I've ever read, but that might be interesting from a medical point of view. He looks at sort of how the world has changed basically in charts, things like the decline of disease, decline of poverty, things like that worldwide. But it's a really fascinating book. Hans Rosling, Factfulness. So that might be one recommendation for you. Oh, wonderful example here. I'll complete my Nuffield research project on the rise of domestic abuse during lockdown. That sounds really fascinating and a really worthwhile project. That'd be really important. I think that sounds a really great one. Well done. I will read notes to analyse options. Tom Huff, an undercover economist. Very good, yes. High court in my local area and observe and make notes. Very good. And I will read at least 3 economist articles and formulate an essay research project based on my opinion for or against the argument. Oh, well done. Yeah, that's really fantastic. A lot of really good thinking there. 3 economist articles. Yeah, that's a really good one. High court in your local area, brilliant. If it reopens, I've sat in on some magistrate court cases myself. I find that really fascinating. So that'd be a good one. Undercover economist, that's a really good one to read. Just beware that it is one of the books that everyone reads. So you have to either say something really interesting about it, or use it as a base to actually then springboard onto something else. So maybe there's a particular chapter or a particular example that's used, and you know, you'll want to kind of launch off of that quite quickly. It's a really good book, really well received, but yeah, lots of people who are interested in economics read that. So you want to just differentiate yourself a bit by maybe just taking it out in a slightly different direction. By mid-July, I will listen to a scientific podcast or a movie that I can find inspirational to further my interest. So to make that smart, we probably want to be a little bit more specific about what that podcast is and then what you're going to do. But yeah, mid-July, that's very good. So that would be really fantastic. There's lots of great podcasts out there. So that's a really good one. Videos on finance modelling. Yes, absolutely. And make notes on it by the end of July. That'd be really good. Listen to a podcast on the recent discoveries or recent research in the pharmaceutical industry by the end of July. Yes, brilliant. That's fantastic. That's a really good thing to do. I can see that Elham has posted in the chat a link to Goodreads. Factfulness, yep, so there's my link there to Factfulness. Thank you very much, Elham. So that's a really good one. But podcast on recent discoveries in the pharmaceutical industry, that'd be really wonderful. And you know, a good place to start for that, I don't know because I haven't looked myself, but generally a good starting point is if you can go to institutes that represent professionals. So yeah, is there an institute for pharma that's, pharmaceutical industry? I'm sure there is, in the same way that there is for lots of other professions. They will probably have a website, they'll probably have links to things. So that might be a good starting point if you're interested in that work. But wonderful. So absolutely, thank you very much for that. I hope that was helpful. It's easy-ish coming up with goals. It's much harder to actually put them into practice and to actually go out and deliver on the goals you've set yourself. But at least we're on the right track now, which is really encouraging. So I'm gonna leave you there. That's the end of my morning and sort of into the afternoon session. I hope it was helpful to have this time to talk about personal statements, how they're used and how you can sort of really draw out your own thoughts and personalities within them. I'm going to hand over now back to Fawzia for the next session, and then I'm going to join you again towards the end of the afternoon, and I think we're going to do a bit more Q&A. So I'll be on the line and happy to answer your questions at the end of the day as well. But thank you very much for your time, your attention, and for participating in these early sessions. I know you've had to listen to me for quite a lot of the day today, so thank you very much for bearing with me. And yes, I look forward to seeing the rest of the sessions run this afternoon and coming back to join you in the afternoon to pick up on any final questions. So until then, all the best, and I will catch you in about an hour. So Fawzia, it's back to you.
Thanks very much, Kate. That's been a really useful couple of sessions from Kate, where we've got some really practical ideas about how to do personal statements and also how to set SMART goals. I did notice some of those SMART goals had slightly less specific deadlines, so you really need to think about those when you're writing your SMART goals, and perhaps make a note of those deadlines for yourself in your calendar and see whether you're on target to meet those deadlines. I think that's quite important for you to start getting to the habit of giving yourself a deadline and working towards it. So we're just going to have another presentation. So this is a really exciting presentation from Hiyalti Rognalvunsen. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Hjalti. I know that's probably not correct. I'm sure you'll be able to correct us later on, correct me later on. Hjalti is going to give us a presentation on how to present to people, to an audience, and I'm sure you're going to find it fascinating. Are you with us, Hjalti?
I am with you. Can you hear me? Can I have
Hi.
a thumbs up if you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Fine. Very nice. Yeah, you pretty much nailed the name. I think it was all good. I know I have a ridiculously long last name, so I'll take anything that sounds in the direction. So you are correct. I am going to be speaking about how to do a good presentation. My talk is based around 6 tips that I have found really helpful in my career and in presenting in general. And presenting is something that I really enjoy doing because it gives me energy. And, I also just like speaking to people on the line, such as yourself, and maybe share my experiences and in return, hopefully learn something from you guys as well. I've been watching you guys set the SMART goals. And I wish when I was your age, I had the discipline to actually set these goals and follow them through. So I'm very impressed by what I'm seeing from you guys, and I hope to stay on the line and learn a little bit more about everybody and about everybody's lives. So a little bit about myself. My name is Hjalti, or Hjalti, anything that pronounces those 6 letters in some sort of logical way. And I'm from Iceland originally. I've been in London for 4.5 years, almost 5 years now. And I work for Kantar, which is one of the supporting companies for migrant leaders. We had a workshop with Elham and the team at our offices back in December, and we're hoping to be able to welcome some more of you into our offices once that becomes allowed again from this pandemic. I've been in the marketing industry now for about 10 years, and I've done loads of different things. I've worked in a bank, I worked in a telecommunications company. Now I'm doing consulting for Kantar, which is really interesting because you really get to work with a lot of different companies. So one of the companies that we work with, for example, is Google, and we work a lot for Mondelez, who makes the Oreo cookies, and Unilever, who makes Ben & Jerry's. So we're working with these brilliant brands that are really shaping people's, shaping culture and taking part in culture. So it's a great space to be in if you like logic and magic. And me and Elham were talking about this earlier. So you have the creativity and the opportunity to influence these big brands and how they show up in our lives, but also you can use your logic and your math skills and your ability to read data to actually understand what is beneath that and why you should be able to make the recommendations that you're making. So that's a little bit about me. Now, being a consultant, a huge part of that is actually being able to stand up and present, and that can be coming in various different ways. So you can be standing up on stage, presenting in front of loads of people, but you can also be in a situation like this where I'm standing in my sitting room and I'm presenting you guys over Zoom. I've also had to present over a phone call without having any video or anything to share. So just telling my story like that. And then finally, I've also had to do pitches and presentations where I'm sitting across a desk from another person. It's just me and them, and I'm showing them slides off my computer. So there's various different scenarios when you're going to need presentation skills and being able to speak publicly, whether it is in a small setting or a large room. And I've pulled together these 6 tips that I think are going to help you, and I hope that they will. I hope you have some questions for me at the end, and hopefully you have some tips of yourself that you can maybe give me that can help me become an even better presenter. Because I'm always learning from other people, and I'm always excited to see what other people do, what helps other people, so that I can keep growing and making myself a better presenter. Now, Foggia, I think you have to hand over the host rights to me so that I can share my screen. I'm getting a message that I can't share my slides.
Yeah, Kate, if you're still with us, please, could you share the host, pass over the hosting to Hjalti?
Shelley, we did it.
Marie, could you please mute your audio?
So what we're going to do after I've shared this presentation with you is I will make sure that Fozia and Elham, they have the presentation, so I can share it with you guys and you can look over each one of the tips, because then you can listen to me, you can take some tips from me, some cues on how you can do these things, and then you can refer back to the slides and make sure that you're able to kind of implement those tips. And if there's something that you don't necessarily remember, you can always refer back to that document. So here we go. We're just waiting for the permission to be able to share the slides. But in the meantime, is anybody here who has who is getting ready to do a job interview? Maybe you have to present something extracurricular. You're working on a project at school. Is there a scenario coming up, or you've done recently where you've had to do some sort of presenting? Please let me know in the chat, because I would love to hear what the struggles you guys have had to have with these things. So please, let's keep the chat going as I'm presenting, and please send any questions, and I'll try to answer them at the end. All right, so I am now the host. I will now share my screen. I'm going to share this PowerPoint slides. Here we go. 6 tips on becoming a top presenter in any settings. I hope that you can see this properly. Okay. Like I said before, I think these are tips that work in any setting that you're in. It can be in a job interview. It can be in an auditorium in front of loads and loads of people. It can be in a one-on-one setting. It can be with a teacher. It can be in front of your peers. It can be in front of your parents. So take these tips as you can. They are both aimed, everything that I'm going to say to you is something that's hopefully going to help you presenting in person, as well as helping you do this over Skype and in a virtual world. Because who knows when we're going to be able to be in an auditorium in front of loads and loads of people again. So I'm going to give you tips through all of them, even though some of the words may relate to you being in person. I'm also going to give you some tips of how you can use those virtually. So I'm just going to go on to the first one, which is act like you're on stage. So whenever you're presenting anything, I want you to be in the mindset that you're standing on stage, whether it be on a phone call, in a classroom, or in an interview. So it doesn't matter where you are, you're there to play a role, and your role is to deliver the best presentation of yourself or whatever the content is that you're presenting as possible. So you can imagine that you're a Daniel Day-Lewis or Brad Pitt or anybody. They're always on stage and they're always performing a role, and they're always trying to deliver the best performance that they can. So don't be distracted by the venue, and just imagine that you're on a stage and you're playing a role. So right now I'm playing the role of a presenter on presenting. And I'm trying to do that as best as I can. And that is my role. And my aim is to deliver that as best as humanly possible. All right, on to the second one. And this has to do with volume. Your voice is a very powerful instrument. And just by playing with the volume, how you're presenting, you can actually control the attention of an entire room. So for example, if you speak up, and you speak louder, that's automatically going to wake people up, and it's going to focus their attention on, oh, did I miss something? He was obviously trying to make a point. What was this? So you'll perk up people's ears. You'll catch their attention by speaking up. But then if you're trying to make a point, you can actually bring your voice down, because if I'm speaking lower, it forces you to focus more in on what I'm saying. So you can control the attention of a whole room and a whole auditorium or a 3 people call just by going up and down with your voice. You can also use your voice to place emphasis on your key points. So imagine how I'm saying this sentence. I can say you can place emphasis on your key points, and the emphasis there, as I'm trying to talk about the word place. But if I say you can place emphasis on your key points, then that changes the whole structure of the sentence and what it is that I'm trying to say with that sentence. So make sure that you're not speaking in monotone. You're placing emphasis at the right moments. Now, a key thing that I had struggled with in the past is that when I'm presenting, I tend to get into a rhythm and then I roll through everything like a steam train, because I get into a rhythm and I get so excited about what it is that I'm presenting, and I'm trying to have the maximum impact, and it's just so much energy for me. And I was always told, make sure that you're taking a breath, make sure that you're pausing, because people are maybe a couple of seconds behind you trying to comprehend what it is that you're trying to say. So make sure that you're taking a pause, and especially if you feel like you're on that steam train and you're trying to speak too fast, just take a little breath and reset and continue. It only takes a second. It's not going to impact your presentation. It's just resetting a little bit and making sure that your voice is calm. And this is true regardless if you're in person or if you're virtual. And it's actually more true when you're virtual, because you don't have the feedback of the people that you are speaking to often. So if you don't have their video, you don't know what their reaction to your words are. Now, this is one of my favorite ones, because this has to do with your posture, how you show up. I always, when I'm speaking, I like to stand. So that's why I put my computer up on a chair that's up on my kitchen table right now. Otherwise, I would be sitting down. But this has to do with your posture and the way that you stand. So imagine, you think about a tree in the wind. A tree in the wind is going to sway from side to side, but its roots are always linked to the ground. So if you're imagining that you're a tree, it's just about placing your feet wide. You place them wide, shoulder width apart. Stand in your feet. Do not move your feet, but as you're presenting, you can sway from side to side as you're making your point. It's also more kind of makes your presentation more lively. Now, if you are sitting, you can also use this principle. What I would urge you to do when you're making a presentation as you sit in front of a computer screen is pick the most uncomfortable chair that you have in your house or is around you, because that makes that you have to perk up, your back becomes straight, and you're just giving up that much more energy. It's maybe a little bit uncomfortable, but you're only going to be presenting for maybe 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And plus you'll forget about the uncomfort when you get into the rhythm of presenting your content. Because if you're sitting on a couch or you're sitting in a very comfortable chair, what you're automatically going to do is you're going to kind of slouch down and become comfortable. And when you are comfortable, you start speaking slower and there's less enthusiasm, and people can sense that energy that you're giving up. So it may make them feel like you're not excited for what you're presenting. So if you're presenting sitting down, pick the most uncomfortable chair that you can possibly find in your house. If you cannot stand, I would personally just recommend standing if you can. Okay. Now, this is actually a key point, and it's actually a very kind of sore point for a lot of people, because you're presenting something. Let's say that you've been doing loads and loads of research for a school project, and now you're presenting it, you're presenting your findings, and somebody asks you a question that you don't know. Now, you're actually going to show that you're smarter by admitting that you don't know something, instead of trying to, make up the answer really quick, or giving off a bad answer that turns out to be wrong. So never pretend to know everything, because this word I don't know can make you sound more credible, because it places an emphasis that the stuff that you do know, you know that, and so you know what you know, and you definitely know what you don't know, which is very, very powerful. If you get a question that you don't know, what you can always do, there's tricks that you can do. You can try to switch the conversation to the stuff that you know. So if you get the question, you can answer, I don't have the answer to that. I can look into it and get back to you. Or you can, and then you can say, but what I do know, enforcing the stuff that you do know, and really, really driving that point home that you're an expert on those things. So never pretend to know everything, but know the stuff that you know. Know the stuff that you know, and know the stuff that you don't know. Now, this is a key point here: holding people's gaze and looking people in the eye, and making sure that you have that connection with your audience. When you're in a small room with 10 people, this can be quite easy, because you're standing in front of them and you can just look and switch from person to person. How do you do this in a virtual world? Now, what I've come to find with this is that I prefer having the video on, even if it's just my video, because it gives you a focal point. So right now, this is going to sound really weird, but I'm looking myself in the eye, because it's a person that I'm looking at, and I'm getting a facial reaction from myself. It just gives off the energy to your audience that you're actually paying attention, that you're in the conversation, that you live it. Whereas if you have your video off and everybody else has their video off, it's much easier for you to just kind of read your notes. You may lose your focus a little bit, and all of a sudden you're checking Instagram a little bit. But if the camera is on, you have nowhere to hide. You are present, and I would probably request from the people that I was presenting to, for them to have their camera on as well. In many cases, especially if it's a small cohort, if you're doing a presentation to 2 or 4 people, you would want the camera on, because you want their reaction. You want to be able to see it, because it's easier for you. And then there's the whole thing about not reading the slide. Your slides, if you're presenting a PowerPoint deck or a PDF, your slides are there to help your audience. They're there to help you navigate where you are in the story that you're telling. The slides are not there to be read. So I haven't read a single word on this slide. What you want is you can have your notes to the side, but you want people to be listening to you. You don't want them to be reading your slides, because otherwise they wouldn't need your presentation. So make sure that you're trying to hold people's attention on you. And these are some tricks that you can actually do. Now, the sixth and last point is one of my favorite points. And this is another one that has to do with posture. And you can see a picture there of Wonder Woman. And the tip or the advice that I'm trying to give you is stand like Wonder Woman. Assume the Wonder Woman pose. So if you've seen the movie Wonder Woman, she's got this radiant stance, where she stands all confident, chest up, shoulders back, really straighten her back. And this is actually a very good trick, because right now I'm in this stance, and this stance helps me give off confidence. It makes me seem confident, and your audience wants to see you being confident, because then they believe you more when you're speaking. And the trick is, this is actually a subconscious thing, where if you are assuming a confident pose, you are not only radiating that energy towards your audience, you actually start feeling more confident. And it's something that is going to help you feeling more confident and deliver what it is that you're trying to present. So it's a win-win situation. So as it says there, keep your head high, chest up, and just crush it. Now I said there would be 6 tips, and there have been 6 tips, but I am going to slide in the 7th, just a little bit of a bonus tip, because this is probably the most important one when it comes to presenting and public speaking, and it's a very an underrated one, and one that's often overlooked. And it actually has nothing to do with public speaking. It has nothing to do with presenting, but it has everything to do with the way that you show up. So what I want you to do is I want you to remember the 5 P's. What are the 5 P's, you ask? Well, proper preparation prevents poor performance. So you may be nervous about speaking in public. You may be nervous about presenting, but if you know your stuff, if you've done the preparation, if you know what it is that you're going to say, you're much, much, much likely to succeed. And because you can master all these tricks that I'm trying to tell you, you can stand like Wonder Woman and, be like a tree and sit on the most uncomfortable chair. But if you don't know the stuff that you're presenting and you haven't prepared, then it's all going to be for waste. So this is something that I live. I take this so seriously. So for example, for this talk, I have delivered this talk many times before. I wrote every single word on the slides. I even picked the images. What I was doing prior to coming on camera is I was writing down notes of the things that I was going to say. It only, even if I've delivered this 10 times before, it only took me 10 minutes just to sit down and write down what it is that I'm going to say. I've looked at my notes once because I've written them down. I know what it is that I'm wanting to say. So please, guys, proper preparation prevents poor performance, the 5 P's. And preparation is not only about reading your slides. It can also be, if you have a sore throat, you have a little bit of water on the side so you don't have to stand up and go and get that glass of water when you're in the middle of your presentation. So that's it for me. I hope this was useful. I want you guys to take a little moment now, maybe think about if there's a specific tip or a specific rule that is most relevant for you, or the one that you like the most. I would love to see something about that in the chat box. So please let's keep this going, and I hope this was helpful and leaves you energetic for your next presentation or whatever it is that you have to do. Now I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to hand over to Fauja again, make host. I'll be sticking around and I'll be a part of the Q&A. So if you have any questions for me, please fire them over. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and look forward to seeing what's left over of the conference. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Hjalti. I hope everybody found that interesting. It's always worth bearing in mind that just to center yourself and think about how you're going to do your presentation. And that's something that I've been thinking about, because I'm going to do a presentation for the first time today to all of you. And that's really just to share some tips with you about how you present yourself, rather than how you present your subject, how you present yourself. And it's all about creating first impressions. So bear with me, I'm just going to share my screen with you. And I'm going to talk to you about creating first impressions. We don't often think about the impression that we create in terms of how we present ourselves. And so really what I wanted to do was give you an opportunity and ask you to take the time to think about how you present yourself, what it is that you leave people thinking about you and why it's important. And part of the reason why I decided to sort of create this presentation was because of some of my own personal experiences from when I was younger and as I've changed jobs and gone through my career. Also, actually, some of the experiences that I've had as I've been in this role as head of operations, and I've had the opportunity to speak to quite a few of the candidates that apply to us for the development programme. And we've also had some feedback from mentors, and that's always worthwhile taking on board and sharing with candidates and people in the programme, so that's part of it. And also something that Maya Angelou said, and I'm going to come back to that a little bit later on. So some of the things I want you to think about in terms of how you write. So I know I can give you an example. I've had some emails from people that call themselves all weird and wonderful things like Batman or Coolster or various, I'm sure you can imagine various names. Have a professional looking email address, preferably your first name and your last name, so that when people get an email from you, they know straight away who it's from and who they're dealing with. But don't treat your emails as if they're a chat on a text message or in Instagram. Treat it as a professional piece of writing, almost like an old-fashioned letter. When you're in the early stages of contacting people through email, you need to keep it professional and you need to keep it business-like. So that means topping and tailing, being courteous in your opening line, being courteous in your closing line. Professionals that you're writing to, they're not your friends. They may become your friends and they will be friendly, and you certainly must be friendly towards them, but don't talk to them as if they are your friends in the same way that you would talk to your friends. As I said, once you've got to know people a bit better, then you can be less formal with them, but always start off on a formal basis and actually reflect the style that you're receiving. So if you see something in a certain style, it's formal, it's dear this, kind regards at the end, yours sincerely or even yours faithfully, but we don't see those so much on emails. But reflect that, mirror it, so that you're adopting the style that you're being sent. And again, on phone calls, it's really about telephone manners and how your manner comes across on the telephone. Now, they often say if you smile when you answer the phone, that comes across in your voice and that comes across to the person that you're speaking to. So it's something certainly I always try to do. It's also important to listen when you're on a phone call, especially if it's a long one and it's possible that you could lose focus or you could lose concentration. So do listen to what people are saying to you, take careful notes. If you need to, make sure that you've got action points agreed before you close it, and obviously make sure everything's covered that you need to cover, and then say thank you, wish them a good day and move on. But it's basically about phone etiquette and making sure that you end the phone call having agreed what you need to do and agreed what action is going to be taken by both parties. So Hjalti presented you with 5 Ps. I've got a few more here for you, and Qs as well. So with your phone calls, if it's a planned phone call, it's an appointment. So you need to have put a reminder in your phone and you need to treat it like a formal appointment. So that means being ready to answer the phone at the time that you're expecting a call. And if it's important to you, if it's a priority, then the way you answer the phone is really important. So quite often you might answer the phone to your friends as, you know, in a really, really informal way. When you've got an appointment or you don't know who's calling you because you haven't got their contact details in your phone, then say your name, and ask who's speaking, and be quite formal until you have established exactly who you're speaking to. as I said, put reminders in your calendar so you know that you've got an appointment coming up. And as Hjalti said before, be prepared. Read over your material or your emails, check why you've got this conversation about to happen, and arm yourself with the information that you need to be able to have a productive conversation. Okay, now we've talked about interviews. Kate talked about interviews possibly for university. Hjalti's talked about presentations to audiences. And the other sort of group event that you need to think about is maybe if you're going to an open day, if you're going to an assessment centre, if you've been invited for lunch, if you're going to a conference in person. Think about getting there on time. How do you present yourself in terms of your dress, and how do you prepare? So make some travel plans in advance, make sure you know where you're going. Is there a dress code that you need to adhere to? Have you got all the information that you need with you? Have you got your CV? Have you researched the company, done a Google check? Have you prepared your answers for an interview? The STAR format is one that I often recommend to people when I speak to them, which is situation, task, action, and results. So think about when you're preparing for an interview about situations that you've been involved with, the tasks that you were completing, what the activities were that you completed, and what the results were. And then that way you're prepared to give answers in a nice flowing way when you've got an interview, and don't forget to rehearse those so that you know that you're going to think of all the responses at the right time. Always have questions ready. It's really important, and I'll explain a little bit more about that, but it also demonstrates your interest in wherever you're going, in the job, in the company, in the people that you're speaking to. So it's really important. It's quite hard sometimes to think of questions, so maybe think of 4 or 5. If you're in a group setting, somebody may have already asked some of those questions, so have a couple up your sleeve just in case, or build on somebody else's question again if you're in a group setting, and maybe or ask somebody to clarify what they meant by their previous answer. That's always a helpful one. And this last point, there's no such thing as a free lunch. So people will always be watching. That's why I put, have your show face on. You're always performing. You need to be performing at your best, and you need to present yourself at your best to give your best impression. One of the image there of mastering business attire is one of our guidance documents on our website, and I would encourage anybody that needs a little bit more information about how to present themselves in terms of their dress to go and have a look at that if you haven't already done that. So I also wanted to talk to you about future-proofing. Sometimes people will have Googled you before they interview you. They will know something about you that you don't necessarily expect them to know. You've already created an impression. You don't know that they have that impression of you. These are all things that we're going to be covering in our pre-mentoring program, which some of you may well do, some of you may not do. It depends on where you are, at what stage you're at in our development program. If you've already got a mentor, then it might not be something that you want to take part in. But if you haven't, when we get that up and running, we'll let you know. And hopefully you'll find it interesting. It will help you prepare for having a mentor and to think about some of these issues in a little bit more detail. So I wanted to speak to you about Maya Angelou. One of the things that she said was, and I'm going to read this, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And the reason I wanted to use that quote, and it's one that we've got in one of our character cards in our young leader model, is that she basically, if ever anybody makes you feel bad or uncomfortable, you do tend to remember that. And you might forget what they've said. And I said to you earlier on, think about how you speak to people, think about what you say to people and what you write to people. And now basically I'm saying, people will forget that. They may well forget those small details, but they won't forget how they felt in themselves. And essentially, really what you want the feelings to be when you have any sort of interaction, for an example, in an interview, you want them to think that you're a team player. You want them to feel respected. You want them to feel important. You want them to feel that you've cared about what they're telling you. And you also want them to feel that they want to know you. So there's a little acronym there. It's a trick. So the trick to leaving a good impression of yourself is to think about how people will feel about you when you've gone. And the way to try and learn about this a bit more is to think about people who make you feel good, who leave a good impression with you. And if you think that they're good role models, then notice what they do and maybe adopt some of their ways of doing things. It's always a good idea to use role models that are going to leave a positive feeling with you. So I wanted to ask if anybody had any questions. We're going to actually, sorry, I've gone a little bit further forward. We're going to have some time to, I'm going to stop sharing that. We're going to have some time to answer some questions if anybody has questions. You can either put them in the chat or you can put your hand up on the reactions, and we'll ask you to turn your audio on so you can speak to us if you'd like to. Other than that, we're a little bit earlier finishing, which I'm sure you'll be pleased about. So please type in any questions that you might have, or if there's any questions for Hjalti, Kate, Elham or myself, please put your hand up in the reactions. Okay. Can I ask Elham, Kate and Hjalti to put their audio back on so that we can hear each other? Thank you. And okay, so we're not getting any questions at the moment. I'm hoping that means that we've covered everything that you need to know in the presentations, and everybody's got all the information that they need and feel that they've absorbed all of that. Just to mention that we will be sharing all the slides that we've been using today on our website once we get those all loaded up. And we've also been recording the conference, so there will be some parts of that will be used, the speaker recordings. While I'm still waiting for questions, and Hjalti is saying that he can answer anything regarding presenting, marketing or growing up in Iceland. Thank you, Hjalti. And we can still take questions on personal statements and university admissions. So please, if you have anything left that you want to ask Kate, then do put your hand up or put something in the chat. I'm going to share my screen just for my last slide. I think I'm going to share my screen for my last slide. Sorry. I must practice sharing the slide from the slide that I want to use. So that's one for me to learn. So bear with me. I'm just going to put up my last slide and try again. Okay. Right, there you go. That's nearly worked. What I'd like to do, although I don't think I'm going to have time now, is I was going to ask you what other topics you might ask. You might ask us to cover in the next event that we do next year, this event next year. So if you've got any suggestions that you'd like to make, please share those with us. We're going to send you an evaluation form, a survey that we'll send to you through email when we write to you again with information about where we're going to make those documents available, especially the goal setting template that we weren't able to get access to. I hope that you found the conference helpful. I think there's quite a few learning points and action points that you should take away with you. For example, about starting to make sure you've got your first drafts of your personal statements done. Kate gave some really practical tips there about things to do, things to avoid, things to include, and activities that will give you the super curricular information that you need to add to your personal statements. She's also given you some information about SMART goals that will help you prioritize and focus your time during the next few weeks that you're writing your drafts, and collect information and experiences that you're going to be able to use. Lastly, I know some of you have done the masterclass and some of you haven't. We will send a link to anybody that asks us for one if you email us at mentees@migrantleaders.org.uk, and I'm going to put that in the chat now, so that you can email us if you want to. Sorry, if you want to get the new link for the Varsity Scholars Masterclass, we'll send you that information, and we'll also be sending out the survey to get your feelings on the evaluation of the conference, and we will also let you know how we can share the conference documents. So if there aren't any questions, and I'm not seeing anything coming up, I'm going to type in here our email address. That you can write to us on with anything that you might want to follow up on about the conference. Okay, so with that, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you very much for joining us, and do get in touch if you need anything from us.